everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be it's one of my Dear Debbies, which means I have received an email inquiry from somebody. And the question I'm going to be addressing today is the question about why doesn't everybody understand the law of attraction and how it works? This came from a young woman who I've been conversing with, and she said, this just makes so much sense, and yet she has friends and relatives who just have absolutely no interest in law of attraction, knowing that if they understand how it works, that it could really improve their life experience. So that's the question I'm going to address today in this Dear Debbie series. Why doesn't everybody make use of the law of attraction? This is a pretty big question, I have to admit, addressing this idea of law of attraction, and because it goes back to belief systems. And of course, we never want to shove our beliefs down somebody else's throat. But when it comes to belief systems, why is it that some people are so wrapped up in like organized religion and things that just dictate behavior, and they have negative, fearful consequences if you don't follow the rules? And then there's this other population of people who are just all light and love and spirit and all of that. It's so interesting to look at this, and I want to address this today in answer to our question about law of attraction and why doesn't everybody get this, by considering the different perspectives. As we come into this life experience in form, we can have different perspectives about life on different issues. But as we grow and learn and kind of evolve into who we are as adults, we generally have, one perspective. Sometimes we'll evolve into the next one. And they're all about vibrational frequency, which falls right into law of attraction. So, whether or not you choose, before your birth, that you're going to have this life experience in this particular level, that is a conversation for another time. But I want to talk about the 4 different levels of understanding or perspective or point of view. So let's talk about that. The first one is very egocentric. I, me, I, me, I, me. It's all about me. And this is a perspective that you may recognize in yourself about some subjects or everything, or you may recognize it in others about some subjects or everything. But this is the perspective of I, me, that everything is about me. Everything is for my benefit. How does this help me? And they're not necessarily bad people that have that perspective, but it is kind of I don't know, it's a lower vibrational frequency. Please don't misunderstand me. When I say a lower vibration, I don't mean a worse vibration. There's no judgment here. There's no hierarchy of better or worse, or, smarter or less smart. There's none of that going on. It is simply a matter of development and a personal evolution. And we've all been at this stage, if we're not right now. So this is the first level of perspective. So if you have someone at that perspective that's in that very I, me, they don't really pay a lot of attention to other people. I don't imagine that somebody in this point of view really is going to understand or care about law of attraction, because it kind of goes beyond the I, me belief, the perspective. Having that perspective is important. We have to take care of ourselves, right? We have to have that, that personal attention to what we're doing, the decisions we're making, and those kinds of things. So it is an important perspective to have. But if we don't evolve into the place of taking other people's the perspectives into our experience and kind of reaching out and understanding that we are not the only ones in the world, we can really start to feel isolated. We may begin to alienate other people. And so just be aware of that this is a point of view that has its advantage, as they all do. but it's also a point of view that is most likely not one where you are going to really have any interest in the law of attraction and how that works, because that involves more of a cosmic kind of a perspective. Does that make sense? Take a look at the next one up. This is a higher vibrational frequency. And again, please do not confuse this, next level up, higher vibe, as better. It's not better or worse. It's just different. And as we evolve through these different levels of vibrational frequencies, we attract different things into our lives. And really, that's kind of the point of it, right? Is learning this wonderful idea that we can control the things that we manifest and bring into our lives, that we just don't have to live life by default, which most people do, right? It's like, oh my God, I can control what I bring into my life by what I focus on, because what I focus on sends a vibe. That vibe resonates with other like vibes, and that comes back to me. That information on that frequency comes back to me. Okay, and that is a higher level of understanding, and we have to have these other ones first. I when I think about little kids, I can kind of see them going through these stages. It's natural, the I, me, mine. And then they evolve up into this next one, this number 2 that we're going to talk about here. And this one has more to do with a group consensus, where we identify with a group. And this one's it's really common, and it's important. We all have to go through this. Some of us go through it and continue to evolve beyond it. Other people go into it and they stay there because that's what they choose to do, is to stay there. Now, this is the group identity. You see this in sports. You see this in politics. This is what we believe. And especially, oh my gosh, religion too. It's like, well, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Let me go ask and find out what my religion says about that. I have a lot of relatives who do this all the time. And they spout these opinions and these perspectives about politics and about this and that. And it's not really their idea. It's like they don't know how to think for themselves. Well, let me rephrase that. They choose not to think for themselves, right? And their opinion becomes that they are echoing the opinion of their group. This is what the group tells us is right. This is who the group tells us to vote for. This is what we stand for in this group. And you're a member of that group. And there's a lot of advantage to being the member of a group. You get all the benefits of that. You ever belong to a union? It's kind of like that, right? So this is a group-centered view. And you put the group's needs ahead of yours. So in this perspective, again, I don't see that a lot of people are going to be open to the understanding of law of attraction, because the law of attraction it kind of requires that you do your own processing, your own thinking, your own understanding. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you can't belong to a group of people that understand law of attraction and work together on that. It's definitely possible. And, maybe we got a little bit of that kind of a group going here on my YouTube channel. I would like to think that, but I would also like to think that we're not rigid in our belonging to this group of like-minded beings. But this second one here is kind of a challenge. This can be a challenge because it really introduces the idea of separation. It can become an us versus them kind of perspective. So in that aspect, that sort of defies law of attraction thinking, right? And they don't understand that as you get into that us versus them perspective, that you are in fact sending out the vibration of separation, of self-righteousness, of competition, and that kind of thing. So sorry, just checking my notes here. This level always creates separation, and that goes against my personal beliefs that we are all one, and that our true selves beyond the small self, when we are in that true self, that we all are that true self. It's that same true self. You can call it God or the divine or source or the field. There's a lot of different ways that we like to look at that and call that. But this second level of perspective I'm talking about definitely brings in the idea of separation. And I remember, in my younger years belonging to a group, and I liked, in my younger years belonging to a group, and I liked that group identity because it gave me somewhere to belong. It's a human need, that need to belong, to have other people that you feel accepted by them. And so this is a very, very popular point of view that people will get into and stay there because it can be very, very comforting to them. And they can become emotionally addicted to it. That's a whole nother video if you're interested in looking at that to understand more about emotional addiction. But, the challenge with the group-centered thinking and the separation is that this is kind of an aha moment. When you belong to this kind of a group, you can get the idea that you can step out of the group. It's like, I know I don't really agree with everything here, but there's a big risk at leaving the group. I have a number of clients that I work with who grew up in an organized religion, which I will not name, but it had a lot of rules and regulations. And by God, one of them was don't question authority. That's the devil making you do that. And so here they are, there are these free thinking, evolving spiritual beings, and they're thinking other ideas and saying, I don't really quite settle in with this part of our belief system, but we're not supposed to question authority. And it's like, what a conflict. And for them to make that choice to break away from that group thinking was very, very difficult emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. Right. And so I love helping people work with those kinds of things. And this is where I think we kind of start going into this idea that, law of attraction starting to make sense when you start to evolve away from this group think. So to answer the question for this Dear Debbie letter, the people that your loved ones, your friends and relatives who are not interested in law of attraction or, doesn't make sense to them, they may very well be living in these, first or second level points of view. Let's take a look at the third one. I think this is where a lot of us are. And this one is more globally centered. Okay. And it's kind of a Pollyanna. I used to get offended when people call me Pollyanna. Now I thank them for it because it's like, yeah, I am kind of a Pollyanna. I don't see anybody as being my enemy. Are there people that do things that are could be dangerous or hurtful? Yes. And I just stay away from those people. But at their heart of hearts, the soul of who this person is, they are not my enemy. So I'm, incorporating this more of a global perspective. And this is definitely, open to the kinds of thinking that you would expect to see in a law of attraction group. So no enemies. I'm reading my notes. I want to make sure I got everything in here. This is where you start to really, really not pretend that you believe this, but you truly do see that we as humans, we are all one humanity. And, I've seen this for years. You know what helped me say this? When I taught school, I taught at a school that was in a very small town, and we had kindergarten through 12th grade in the same school all the way through. And it was so small that there was only one classroom for each grade. So there was the first grade teacher, and she taught all the first graders. Second grade teacher taught all the second graders, and so on and so forth. I would see these cute little kids come into our school in kindergarten. Cute little buggers, and they were so happy and excited to be in school, and it's adorable. I mean, what are they, 5 or 6 years old? They're just babies, right? And I would get to watch these little children go all the way through the school system until graduation. And it was remarkable to look at how different they were from my perspective as a 12th grader graduating than the way I perceived them when they were just little 5-year-olds in kindergarten. And, they have evolved and gone through this process that is so incredible, but they're still that same person. And maybe you're around babies a lot and you can look at these babies, these beautiful little sweet babies, and then look at some person out on the streets that is offensive to you and say, but that used to be somebody's sweet little baby, right? It's still that same soul. And when you're able to look at people from that perspective, that we are not our deeds, and of course we have to be accountable and all of that. That's, again, another conversation. But you start to realize the true self that you know yourself to be is also true for everybody. And that is such a beautiful way to just start dropping the programmed habit of judging, of self-righteousness, that duality of right and wrong, us and them. It all just kind of falls away. And I think that in this global perspective, we're very, very open to the ideas of law of attraction. And then once you realize how law of attraction works and that you have absolute control over the vibrational frequency you put out, that's a globally centered perspective. I don't think people in those other previous perspectives actually have the ability to do that. Their brains are not wired to it. It doesn't mean they won't be. It's kind of like, giving a physics test to a first grader and saying, you know what, this kid's brain is not wired to pass this test right now in first grade. But as that child grows and learns and evolves and goes beyond where that child was, yeah, they get to the point where they can understand, physics and all of that. I mean, that's a metaphor I'm using, but we evolve from these lower stages. These are our lessons. That's what life is all about, right? And the grand lesson for me is that in understanding these different perspectives, it just makes it so easy to love everybody as they are. Because you know who they truly are, right? You know your true self. There's your true self, there's your the small self. And again, there's no hierarchy of, better or worse, right or wrong. It's just how we are. We've got these two aspects. But as we evolve up into this global perspective, law of attraction becomes very real. And I said there are 4 levels. The next one is more of a cosmic, okay? And this one is very, very much an example of being in tune with the vibrational frequency of your true self. And it's not that you become that true self, it's that that true self becomes you. And that is definitely open for the understanding and the application of law of attraction from that point of view. So this unity consciousness is a beautiful state to be in. And, it's rare. And here's what's interesting too, is that for many of us on the spiritual path, when we hit that, we go up into it and then we come back into the global, and then we go back up into it and we come back into global. So it's sort of a wave, and we're getting better and better at being that on a full-time basis. And I think that's our nature. That's what we're here to do, is to understand how to manifest, in a way that expresses that true self. So I hope I've answered this question. Let me repeat it. Why doesn't everybody understand and want to make use of the law of attraction so they can improve their life experience? Well, it is because so many people simply are not wired to understand it. They don't get it. It doesn't make sense because they have not evolved yet up into those higher levels of perspective that would allow them to understand that. I hope that made sense. So these are my Dear Debbie letters. I love to answer these. And I would invite you to send one to me. I'll put my email here. Please make sure that your email with your question is short and to the point. If I get an email that is a rambling story about everything, and then there's a question embedded in there somewhere, the chances of me getting to it are pretty slim. Because I have a lot of things to go through. But I would love to answer your question. I want to continue this discussion. And I do want to preface this by saying that all of this information is the way it is from my current understanding. And I reserve the right to continue to grow and learn and expand my understanding beyond where it is now. So I might come back to this video in a year or 2 years and say, well, I see it very differently. Let me add on to that. So just wanted to say that. And you get to do that too. So yeah, send me a letter, send me a question. Let's talk about this. It's really fascinating. And thank you. See you at the next go round.